Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ma'am, gentlemen, thank you for being here. I look at the flags behind you, and it means a lot to us. I look at the streamers on those flags, what they stand for, what they represent. I think about the service that you two gentlemen have provided to your country and the blood that you've shared and the friends that you've lost, brothers and sisters that are represented in some of those streamers on those flags. The significance of a hearing like this cannot be overstated, really. We are in an era of adjustment for our nation, whereby we can move into the 21st century as a dominant military force worldwide in order to maintain and preserve or establish peace. And Congress has an incredibly significant job to do to listen to the experts that is provided to us so that we can improve the means by which we provide our warfighters with modern technology. So I thank you for being here and for your service. General Kurilla, you had mentioned multi-year funding versus 1 or 2 year funding. Would you please clarify for this committee the difference between multi-year funding for the DoD versus multi-year contracting for our defense contractors? Because we don't want to lock into a technology that could be replaced by a better, less expensive technology. Would you touch on that?
Sure, I agree. I mean, one of the challenges I think you have, if you're a business and you make X, you have this production line, but if you know you're only going to get money from these companies, you're spreading that out. You only have so much production line. So when we have partners come to us and say, we would like to purchase X, and we tell them they can get it in 2029 because we don't have the production capability, that is a concern. I'm also just as concerned that the industrial base cannot keep up with the weapon expenditure. Every conflict that we've had recently has underestimated the weapons. Russia, Ukraine, Israel. And so I think what we want to do—
Right, yes, sir. So not to interrupt you, but you're at the heart of the problem. What I want to get to here is that if we have to find the sweet spot, and I'm going to ask you what that is. We have a problem of historically like constant design changes with a program. We have to move away from that. If we have multi-year funding for the Department of Defense that gives greater executive authority to accomplish the mission, and build and procure and take delivery of the right vessels and craft. But we don't want to be locked into a multi-year contract with a particular defense contractor, because that would insulate us against the emergence of significantly better tech that's more effective and more lethal and less expensive. We have to be able to make that shift. So what is that sweet spot?
I can't tell you exactly what the sweet spot is, but I do know we have to be agile. We've been making Patriot missiles for a very, very long time, so the multi-year funding on that, I don't know if it's 3 to 5 years, but if I'm a businessman, I'm not going to build new production lines.
Understood.
I don't know if I'm going to get money next year.
That's for like existing tech. Okay, shifting to some tech that's out there that I want to know if it's being shared. Some of our allies in the Middle East are incredibly wealthy. They have unlimited funding for research and development. And from my research indicates that they are fielding some autonomous tech that is far beyond what we have. Are they sharing that with us?
So we are partnered with several of these partners in the Middle East. We do share quite a bit. There are some things that we know that they are using as well, but we have quite a bit of visibility on that.
And finally, what would it take to wipe out Houthi operational capabilities, sir?
I think the number one thing that has to happen is to have Iran quit resupplying them. That they would die on the vine without Iranian support.
die on the vine. We would like that. General Langley, General Quirla, Ms. Thompson, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Maryland, Ms. Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here. And generals, thank you for your decades of service to this nation. It is greatly appreciated. I'm going to start where my colleague left off with the Houthis. Even though we've negotiated the ceasefire with a designated terrorist organization, they continue to launch attacks, as we've said, both at our allies and continue to place global commerce at risk. What can you tell us in this open session about the specific drones attack on Israel, and what are we learning from that?
The specific what, ma'am?
Drone attacks on Israel.
From Iran or from the Houthis?
From the Houthis.
So for the Houthis, I mean, we are still shooting down Houthi UAVs that are going towards Israel. They have taken an Iranian UAV, it's called a Kazo-4, with some modifications, additional gas. They call it a Yafa. It has there's some Houthi firsts here, but it's Iranian equipment that can go 2,600 kilometers. And so when we have that, we've shot down dozens of them. And so they are taking a very simple UAV, extending the range of it, and then Israel has effective defenses as well.
It's been said, but I want to reiterate, we're in, between Ukraine and this region, hypersonic technology development, particularly with drones. What evidence do you have that the Houthis are sharing their drone warfare knowledge with our adversaries?
So with other adversaries, so I will take you back to July of 2024. We killed 7 individuals in Iraq that were setting up 2 UAVs. Of the 7 individuals killed, there was a Houthi UAV expert, a brigadier general. There was an Iranian IRGC UAV expert there. There was 3 Kataib Hezbollah individuals there as well, and there was a Lebanese Hezbollah individual there as well. So we are seeing that. There is Houthis have outreach to Russia. They have gone to China. They have cells in Iran. They're in Syria. They're in Lebanon as well.
Okay, thank you. Switching gears to General Langley. We've touched on in this hearing the very real nexus between our longstanding humanitarian efforts and investments in Africa to build allies, and at the same time, the very real threat China poses, particularly to naval progress, but also the extraction of those rare earth minerals that are critical to national defense. All of that related to national security and your role. Over the last 6 years, the terrorist organization JNIM has seen dramatic growth in activities. You recently gave remarks emphasizing that the U.S. was focused on helping African nations build the self-reliance to fight such terrorists, but it was reported that the vast majority of programs run through the Global Fragility Act, a multi-year initiative intended to bolster stability in vulnerable West African countries, has been shut down by this administration. Can you please speak to the threat of JNIM to the region and its stability?
Congresswoman, thanks for the question. Yes, the epicenter of JNIM right now lies within the countries of Mali and Burkina Faso and to some degree Niger. But it's threatening of the former GFA recipient states. I've met in Cote d'Ivoire with Ambassador Davis Ba, and the thing in the past, they have been able to benefit of being able to share ways ahead for counterterrorism. So in their northern regions of the southern regions of Burkina Faso, the northern regions of Cote d'Ivoire, they've been very effective with the construct they've established. So yeah, they benefited from their whole of government, and I think the GFA had been an enabler for that in the past. But going forward, they know that with the straight talk that we have already said that we need to share this burden. And Burkina Faso we've offered them other opportunities to be able to benefit with what Cote d'Ivoire has been successful at. So it's a sharing of ideas and sharing of the enduring solution to counterterrorism, which all of those countries can benefit from.
Thank you, General. And in my remaining moments, I'm just going to make a statement about the President's recent desire or statements and desire to develop the Gaza Strip into the Riviera of the Middle East, and how deeply troubling those statements are. Many of us share the desire for a lasting two-state solution, driven by self-governance and long-term stability in the region. Yet building such a resort and displacing 2 million Palestinians will only exacerbate tensions and create a target for further hostilities in the region. I understand this isn't directly related to your responsibilities in the military, but I fail to see the national security reasoning. Instead, I want to echo with my last moments my colleague, Congressman Tran's excellent proposal that CENTCOM use its incredible logistics capabilities to support distribution of humanitarian aid in Gaza. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gooden.
Thank you. General Langley, I'll start with you and then move east. Regarding the DRC and Rwanda, could you give me kind of an update, not necessarily a history, but where you see things as they stand today with that conflict?
Yes, at the cusp of it, at the central piece of it, is the encroachment of M23 forces into the DRC, eastern DRC. They've been very successful in their offensive operations, going all the way down to South Kivu. This encapsulates some of the regions that are rich in critical minerals. Just at the diplomatic realm, I won't speak to that piece, but I know that Rwanda is allegedly supporting the M23. And then President Tshisekedi in DRC is trying to get his forces set so they can counter this. So that's all in the diplomatic realm. SADC, a number of regional constructs in southern Africa are trying to solve this problem and trying to come to a truce where we can affect peace. Over.
Well, we would consider both countries to be friends of ours, I believe, so it's tricky in that sense. But in your mind, what needs to happen to wrap this conflict up and bring peace to the region?
From an operational perspective, like I said, this is mainly in the diplomatic realm, so I have to defer to State Department.
Fair enough. Thank you. General, could you, the last time you were here, I asked you about Qatar and our relationship with them. Some of my colleagues have questioned Qatar's reliability as a U.S. partner and their status as a major non-NATO ally. And in light of the President's recent visit, could you clarify the strategic benefits of continuing advanced military exports to Doha and our relationship with them? How's that going?
We have a phenomenal relationship, military to military, with Qatar. They house the largest base in the Middle East in Doha. They provide burden sharing in the form of $300 million a year to run those bases. They have been incredibly supportive of everything we do. Generally, the answer is yes. What is the question when I talk to them?
I find that to be the case as well. I share your belief toward that. How does what opportunities could you see for us to expand that relationship that would benefit our nation?
Sure. Just last week, we inducted for the first time a Patriot component into their depot-level maintenance, and they repaired that component for us. One of the things Qatar has offered to do is to help in either manufacturing or depot-level maintenance for some of the unique systems that we both share. So I think there's tremendous opportunity that can help also our industrial base as well as our maintenance base.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the work you're all doing, and good luck. Thanks so much. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from New Hampshire, Ms. Goodlander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today, particularly to you, General Kurilla and General Langley. I want to thank you for your incredible service to our country, and I will miss you very much as a new member on this committee, so thank you for everything you've done. General Kurilla, I want to take you back to 2022, your confirmation hearing, when you testified that Iran, the Iranian regime, is the #1 destabilizing force in the Middle East. Is that still
remains the #1 malign influence in the Middle East?
Thank you for that. You know, you in your written testimony, you testified that Iran's nuclear threat, its best chance at restoring deterrence and imposing its will on the region is its nuclear threat. And you also testified that Iran has virtually doubled its enrichment capacity in the past 6 months, which is extremely alarming, I think, to everybody on this committee. And I just want to say at the outset that we are committed on a bipartisan basis to taking action on this issue. I'm proud to be supporting the Enhanced Iran Sanctions Act of 2025, and we welcome the Pentagon's help in advising Congress as we think through every tool that can be used to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. I want to ask you, General, about, as many of my colleagues have, the other pillar of the threat Iran poses, its funding for terrorist groups, and particularly the Houthis. So last month, the president reached a ceasefire agreement with the Houthis, the terrorist organization, the Houthis. I wanted to ask you the goal of that ceasefire agreement and the terms of the agreement.
So when the president gave the mission to CENTCOM, it was a very specific mission. On March 10th, he said, I want the Houthis to quit shooting at our ships. That was the mission that was given to us. For 51 days, we pounded the Houthis. They were screaming to all of our partners in the region, to include the Omanis, to get the Americans to stop pounding them. And so they came and said, we will quit shooting at you if you quit shooting. We will stop shooting at you if you quit shooting at us. That met the president's goal.
So stop shooting at American ships.
That was the specific goal that was given to me.
Understood. And the goal is to restore freedom of navigation in this important part of the world where so much of global commercial shipping depends upon the freedom of navigation.
30% of all container traffic.
So has commercial shipping resumed?
So that will be more of a lagging indicator when the insurance rates come down. We just did a freedom of navigation with 4 warships over the last week. Nothing was shot at them. We also had multiple other countries' frigates, and the UK destroyer went through there. I think you will see over time, as long as the conditions exist. Deterrence is always temporal. As long as those conditions exist and the insurance rates come back down, it's a 2-week faster transit to go through the Red Sea and the Suez than to go around the Cape of Good Hope. But right now, a shipping industry is looking at it, as long as the insurance rates stay high, they will choose to go a different route. And so that's going to be a lagging indicator.
So how long do you expect it will take for commercial shipping to resume?
I think you'll see us start to escort some other U.S. flagged ships, and I think others will start to go through there as well over time, as long as the conditions exist.
Thank you, General. Well, as you know well, the cost of this lagging indicator is very real for the American people. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record an article dated June 5th. Red Sea passage remains a no-go for shipping despite U.S. action.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. General, I want to ask you about, well, first of all, so our goal was to protect American ships. Our goal was not to protect our ally Israel, and we are seeing an escalation in the conflict between the Houthis and our ally Israel. You've testified to some of the things we can do to help mitigate that threat to our ally. But I just want to say for the record that this, you have said well that this is a threat that's metastasizing. It's a regional scourge, and the United States cannot give up on this.
We are still protecting Israel, though we have THAAD battery there that is shooting down Houthi missiles, and we shoot down Houthi UAVs that are going towards Israel.
Thank you. General, I was very interested, and I'll be submitting more questions for the record, in what you said about what CENTCOM could do to help deliver humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Can you tell us what resources CENTCOM has to bear towards what I think we can all agree is a really important mission?
So I think that the biggest resources that CENTCOM can assist with is the ground lock is how you move large quantities of that. We assisted the Jordanians in scanning all of their trucks before they went in, and that met the Israeli security concerns of any trucks going in, and we delivered.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Guam, Mr. Moreland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for your participation today, especially what you have in front of you. And over the last 18 months from the administration and CENTCOM and AFRICOM, you've engaged and you sustained some high-tempo operations involving missile defense and rapid force protection. You contested logistics and you counter-proxy engagement, so many of which reflect the type of challenges we're anticipating in the potential Indo-Pacific conflict. So lessons learned, I'd like to hear from each of you from this kinetic operations that you've been doing, whether it be from CENTCOM's counter Houthi maritime strikes or AFRICOM's experience in the dispersed operations and low access environments. What lessons are being actively incorporated into strategic planning for high-end fight in the Indo-Pacific? Ms. Thompson, if we can start first with you, please.
Thank you, Congressman. I think it's an incredibly important question. I'll leave the operational details to General Langley and General Kurilla, but I would say one of the most important things that we're watching is certainly strategic waterways and the ability to flow forces into the Indo-Pacific. Obviously, freedom of navigation for U.S. military vessels through the BAM and the Red Sea is critical to that effort. So I would just highlight that as one of the big takeaways and one of the strategic choke points that's very important to make sure we have control over.
General, please.
Yeah, so I think between both the Iranian attacks on Israel as well as our the Houthi attacks on our naval forces, we have learned a lot that are applicable, and we pass these back to big Navy, big Air Force, the Army as well. Software is a weapon. Our ability to do combined, joint, all-domain command and control. The things that we are doing with software is amazing. We have advanced that. We have engineers every day making improvements on our ability to do that. It's a warfighting headquarters. The things that we are doing with ballistic missile defense, the software is changing based on what we are seeing on the battlefield. The same thing I would tell you as it comes to counter-UAS as well. We are making changes to the Navy software on the spy radars based on what we're seeing. It's the first time in the history of warfare that anti-ship ballistic missiles have been used against ships. I would remind you that the Truman spent 51 days in the longest sustained period of combat for an aircraft carrier since World War II, and they performed marvelously.
Thank you. General?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. And from my perspective, in an operational sense, I look at it as supporting three different combat commanders to include CENTCOM in their globally integrated plan against their foe, especially Iran, and then and even EUCOM in their global plan as well as INDOPACOM. And on this map here that you see the strategic choke points, as far as AFRICOM and what we're charged to do in supporting those respective combat commanders in support of their global plans is to be able to keep us at phase zero of deter, and being able to deter and keep free flow of commerce and freedom of action around us. So we work through our partners, a number of countries across the Maghreb for that end. Every exercise has that teed up as far as a objective to how we do that with shared objectives, shared intel, and common objectives, I should say, with other countries. And that's an enabler for us in my support plans to those respective combatant commanders.
Thank you, General. General Kurilla, and most of my hearings, I'm always an advocate for the Army, right, in the Indo-PACOM area especially. But today I want to advocate for the Navy's role in CENTCOM. So how has the United States participated in this multinational maritime task force to counter both state and non-state actors within your area of operation?
So I'm incredibly proud of the sailors in our Navy and what they've been able to accomplish. So when I look at CENTCOM, it has 3 of the 8 strategic choke points in the world. And what our Navy has been able to do to be able to secure those has been fantastic. I mean, they have really, when you look at what they have done both against the Houthis and in their interdiction of other things coming into the region, they've done a fantastic job.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your service to the nation. I appreciate you all. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning and welcome to General Kurilla, General Langley, and Ms. Thompson. I especially want to thank the 2 generals here today for your many years of service, your dedication to our nation. Since this will be the last time that you appear before our committee, you have worn your uniform so proudly, and your country will always be grateful of that. Both sides of the aisle agree today that we must continue to improve support to service members as well as our standing around the world. But I must say that my constituents and I are still very angry that our men and women in the CENTCOM theater were put at risk by the signal mess with Secretary Hegseth, Vice President Vance, and other senior members of this administration. Our brave service members should never have to worry that our own leaders are giving enemies our mission secrets. As we've seen with the Houthis, we need to be able to properly protect ourselves from drones, and we should be outfitting our own warfighter with drones. The Rock Island Arsenal's Joint Manufacturing and Technology Center 3D prints drones that then get outfitted with the sensors and the systems needed for our important missions. And I think this is crucially needed, but to both generals today. Can you talk about where we need to be going in terms of both our unmanned air systems and counter-UAS capabilities in our regions?
If I could just jump on the additive manufacturing, 3D printing. So we have an innovation task force out there. One of them is Task Force 39, which has an additive manufacturing in Kuwait. We use that for both polymers and metallic additive manufacturing. We'll print parts, get that back to get a system back up until that OEM part can come in. We do that on a routine basis. We are 3D printing drones down in Task Force 99, down in Qatar. And they do with these small attritable drones. We slap some cameras on them, and we use those very effectively as well. So I think this is, when you talk counter UAS, though, a big part of it is the detect. And I think we have to do a better job to be able to detect, and that is something that we've made some recommendations on as well.
General Langley.
Now, I'll just go ahead and state that my buddy here, Corella, in CENTCOM region has been a lead as far as evolving technology to counter drones, because what happens in CENTCOM will eventually happen in AFRICOM. So we've been following his lead in the technology and experimentation, and we've been leveraging that within the AFRICOM region.
Thank you, sir. The new regime in Syria certainly changes the landscape of the Middle East. I'm hopeful that this will really diminish Iran's influence in the region and lessen Russia's foothold in the Middle East. To General Kurilla, with our approach to Syria changing, where do you see things headed today, and what opportunities and challenges do you see going forward?
So the opportunities are significant. I think I see a lot of upside. I see little downside for engaging right now. Ambassador Tom Bark, he's the U.S. ambassador to Turkey, but also the special envoy to Syria. I talk to him often. He is at the table. I think we waited a little too long to come to the table with the fall of Assad back in December. We're now there, and we're able to engage and be able to shape the way forward. I think that's a very, very positive thing.
One of the things that I worry about with the current administration is how we're handling the relationships that we have with our allies around the world, our ability to forge new partnerships and friendships. Building and maintaining these partnerships is so crucial to our own safety and our interests. And as General Kurilla mentioned in your written statement, we can't take our partners for granted. Can you speak to the importance of our allies in the region and what we in Congress need to do to support them?
Well, I think a big part of it is being there for them. I've been to the region 45 times. You have to be there. You have to sit down. You have a meal together, and that's how you build a friendship and a relationship. I talk to the Chads almost every single day. I'm talking to a different Chad, multiple chiefs of defense. I'm sorry. Yeah. Every single day, I'm talking to several of them. When they're sending you pictures of their grandkids, you're part of the family. And to be able to do that, though, what they're asking of us is, hey, one, are you going to be there for us? And the answer is yes. But it's the foreign military sales is their single biggest frustration that they have on the time to deliver. They have the means to purchase. It's the time to deliver that equipment that they're asking for. And that's where I think we can. I'm 40% of all foreign military sales in the world in the CENTCOM region, and I think we can do a better job.
Thank you, gentlemen, both for your service, and we appreciate your dedication to our country. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, I recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Luttrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for coming today, and I'd like to thank everyone in uniform today, as well as our veterans that are in the room. General Kurilla, you talked about ISIS-K in Afghanistan in your opening statement. I'd like a little deep dive, if you don't mind.
Sure. All right, so ISIS Khorasan, perhaps one of the most active in trying to do external plots globally to include against the homeland. Right now, what we saw is the Taliban, in going after ISIS-K, they hate each other, pushed a lot of them into the tribal areas on the Afghan-Pakistan border. Through a phenomenal partnership with Pakistan, they have gone after ISIS Khorasan, killing dozens of them. Through a relationship we have with them, providing intelligence, they have captured at least 5 ISIS Khorasan high-value individuals. They extradited back Jafar, who was one of the key individuals behind the Abbey Gate bombing, And the first person he called, Chief of the Army Staff Munir, was me, and said, I've caught him, I'm willing to extradite him back to the United States. Please tell the Secretary of Defense and the President. So we are seeing Pakistan, with limited intelligence that we're providing them, go after them using their means to do that, and we're seeing an effect on ISIS Khorasan. At the same point, they are continuing to move around. Sometimes they will try and go back into Afghanistan. We have the means to be able to collect, but for the most part right now, they're hanging out right in that border area of Pakistan. And I would also tell you that, I mean, since 2024, the beginning, Pakistan had over 1,000 terrorist attacks in the western area, killing about 700 security and civilians and 2,500 wounded. They're in an active counterterrorism fight right now, and they have been a phenomenal partner in the counterterrorism world.
Does it seem like they're scaling down or scaling up?
So I think from ISIS Khorasan, they got hit very, very hard over the last several months. And so I would tell you right now, they're at a low point right now. What we're getting out of interrogation and exploitation has been significant. But remember, these are the same individuals that did the Crocus Music City Hall attack in Moscow. They did the attack in Kerman, Iran, and they've attempted other attacks. And there is actually ties in a classified setting that I could talk in terms of the homeland.
Whatever we have to do not to go back to that place would be amazing.
That's why we need to, if I could.
Yes,
Congress,
please.
We have to have a relationship with Pakistan and with India. I do not believe it is a binary switch that we can't have one with Pakistan if we have a relationship with India. We should look at the merits of the relationship for the positives that it has.
General Langley, in regards to AFRICOM, it seems as if Russia more or less has Africa landlocked. When I'm looking at the map here, can you give me a kind of a high-level briefing when it comes to Tunisia, Algeria, and Libya, the northern part of Africa? If you roll the clock back maybe a decade, that seems to be the best place you could hide in plain sight, especially in the northern point of Tunisia, with the vastness of the desert. Are we seeing anything happening, developing in the northern part of Africa? Because it seems as if we are centrally kind of focused on where all the rare earth minerals are being mined.
Congressman, that's a great question. And I've always been, through my tenure of command, the last 3 years, engaging with all these countries to the degree as we look at this is NATO's southern flank. And I see those strategic choke points on there. We need freedom of navigation or freedom of action for our ships in support of those war plans for NATO and for EUCOM. So I've been working overtime and engaging with these countries. Morocco's doing their part, and even Algeria, which in some realms that we disagree on some things, but Algeria, we were able to sign a non-binding agreement in cooperation. But I will tell you that Russia is still there. They're still trying to effect an agreement on their own so they can get basing access or port access. And as you even go down into Libya, I met with Field Marshal Haftar almost two times, engaging them to ensure that we can work with them because we have shared threats, especially along their southern borders of terrorism. Just engaging with both sides, trying to get collective agreement in Libya between the GNU and the LNA. That is essential that we keep U.S. diplomatic agreements and cooperation with these countries because we see what Russia's trying to do, establish some ports across the Mediterranean, warm water ports, so that it'll affect their operations, try to get a decisive advantage. But we're not going to let that happen in phase zero coherency operations that we do in AFRICOM.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson, I have nothing for you today. Keep up the great work. I yield back, sir.
You got it easy today from him. All right, we now have Mr. Cisneros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Kurilla and General Langley. Thank you both for your years of service and dedication to our country as you both get ready to retire here in a while. But General Langley, when I was in the Navy, my ship, the USS Ogden, stopped in Eritrea, which was at that time a new independent nation. We went there to show the flag, but to show a support for this new country and really to the region as well. But that's not the impression I'm getting from the current administration. They're pulling away foreign aid. Ships aren't visiting the continent like they used to. We're leaving a void for Russia and for the PRC to fill. And you've been quoted as saying that the PRC is replicating what we have done in Africa, targeting the International Military Education and Training Program that they also said they're going to increase security and training in a number of countries. In April, it was reported that Cairo and the PRC were planning to participate in a joint exercise between their air forces. As the administration continues to pull back and the PRC continues to build relations, what, in your opinion, is the national security risk and impact to Africa as well as to us here at home?
I'd say the CCP is trying to replicate what we do, what we've done in the past, and have a strategic advantage, and especially engaging with our African partners. Because they want to be able to establish an enabler to close the decisive gap that we've had over them for years. I'll just go into maritime sense, especially with their NETF, which is their Naval Expeditionary Task Force. They go around the periphery of the African continent, engaging with a number of countries. We need to be able to get that. You brought up, your naval background. When we had the ARG-Muse, we're not heel to toe anymore. Mm-hmm. We're not 3.0. We do need the amphibious readiness group and the Marine expeditionary units out there on ships. That is a force multiplier for crisis response or any other show of deterrence. I'd say, that's not. That doesn't go across political lines. That goes in operational lines. Navy, as I met with the Vice Admiral in their operation sense, but also met with Admiral Kilby and also Stuart Munch, and they are bringing up the capability to try to provide Africa with that capability so that we can compete with China, especially in the maritime sense. So I would say that one step in the right direction is getting those ARG-Muse back out there and in the AFRICOM theater.
All right, Gator Navy, all the way. Ms. Thompson, you said in your opening remarks that the department is working with African nations to grow, working with them to increase operational independence for these African nations. But I think really what we're seeing, right, is they're not doing that. They're moving towards the PRC. As I referenced here, Egypt and the PRC kind of talking about doing joint operations. How does the department not see this as a red flag? Why aren't we doing something about this? Why are we pulling away and we're just pushing them in the direction of our, of our pacing threat here?
Sir, thank you for the question. I really appreciate it. And I would point you first to our interim national defense strategic guidance. Our top two priorities are defense of the homeland, countering terrorist threats that have the capability and intent to strike the homeland, and then deterrence of the PRC, particularly in the Western Pacific. But obviously, as you outlined absolutely correctly, that bleeds over to the African continent as well. And so I would say from our Title X security assistance approach to the continent, but then also as we're in the development process for our national defense strategy, this is something that is top of mind, and this is certainly not an area where we're pulling back. We want to be very targeted and strategic in our approach to make sure that we are deterring the PRCs, particularly their ability to have a military advantage on the continent. So I would share your assessment on that front.
Well, please take that back to the heads over there, right? As we continue to pull away, they are continuing to build relationships with China and the PRC. And, PRC is more than happy to fill that void as we pull away. And this should be a red flag that they are working with these things, and that is something that needs to be brought up and considered. And with that, I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Dr. McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General Kurilla, General Langley, it has been a pleasure working with you. I wish you fair winds and following seas in your next endeavors. I'm sure you'll be highly successful. We'll miss you. I consider you friends, and if any time you ever want to share a beverage or a box of crayons, just let me know. We'll always be available. General Langley, I'll start with you. The Djibouti base cluster is within striking distance of some of the Houthi weapons, and I was wondering, especially with the development of drones that have been developed in Iran and put together in Yemen, what are we doing for countermeasures, and do you think we could do better? How can we assist you in equipping our bases with countermeasures for those advanced drones and what they're trying to develop?
Congressman, it's an evolving threat, especially with the Houthis on the other side of the Red Sea. And I will get into the specifics of what we actually need to improve upon, enhance upon. We're protected now, but I will get into specifics in closed session of things that I think that we can continue to enhance and evolve in that, because it's not just Djibouti; it's all the way down to Manda Bay in Kenya. So I will say that it is evolving. The Houthis are gaining in capability. And then there's other illicit actors in the region that can be a threat within East Africa writ large.
Would you say that it's safe to assume that we have a ways to go to be secure in our endeavors?
We will always do position improvement. You know, our fighting holes always need to be improved for force protection. That's my number one mission, is protecting the troops on the ground.
And in regards to CENTCOM, we've seen everything from Tower 22 to the ship lanes really kind of being a proving ground for drone attacks and missile attacks. And I'm sure we're going to eventually encounter supersonic missiles and other things that are very, very alarming. What have you learned from those sort of contacts as we advance our technologies and we have these new technologies to deal with?
You have, Congressman, you have to have a layered defense is the first thing, and you have to continue to improve upon your capabilities and evolve faster and move faster than the enemy can on theirs. Look at what happened in Russia with the Ukraine, when you watched also them go to fiber optic drones because of the EW and the jamming that was up there. So they're moving very, very quickly in terms of advancements. We have to move faster.
Yeah, I just talked to an AI community about that very same thing, closing the kill chain, making sure that our next technologies, I mean, fly-by-wire is awesome, but it's kind of like a look back at the tow technology. I want to look forward and look at new terrain models, how we're going to do that. What's your feeling, and this is an associated question that I just came up on just as we're talking, if we're going to have different navigation systems that aren't going to be controlled by semi-autonomous controllers, autonomous weapon systems that literally identify targets without any input once they're launched.
They exist right now.
The question is, would that be a good, I get a little bit squeamish when we talk about autonomous weapon systems that direct themselves and they don't have that final.
I think those exist right now. I know they exist right now. It's when you get into that final mile, that final kilometer that then locks on a target. That's an autonomous target recognition system that has then taken it in and you can't jam it, et cetera.
Yeah, good point, good point. One of the other things I thought was really interesting is there's U.S. aid and other things we do in foreign investments we do that now come into question. Now, some of it's been wasteful, but obviously I'm not against foreign aid because it gives us real influence and really creates stability in different regions. Where do you think we could redirect those funds that have maybe been not spent on the most efficient systems? This is for both of you, and I know we only have 45 seconds left, but where can we best spend the money we do to influence and create stability in those regions that we're talking about right now?
Well, I think from a USAID, State Department is now taking on that responsibility. For us, there are certain countries that absolutely don't have the natural resources, and those are things that we need to look at. And I can get specific with you, and if you have a written question, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Phase 4 operations stability. I've seen it work in Somalia. You know, as they were going through Lower and Middle Shabelle from 2022 heretofore. But without that and recreating that, and or getting it from other countries, that there's going to be a lapse in completing a credible force to do the hold.
My best to you both, gentlemen. Loved working with you. Semper Fi.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will echo all of my colleagues' thanks to both of you for your many decades of service. I've very much enjoyed working with all of you, and General Kurilla, as predicted, I outlasted you. General Langley, I first want to discuss our strategy in Somalia. Under your leadership, the United States has rapidly increased the pace of airstrikes against both al-Shabaab and ISIS Somalia. In the past 5 months alone, the U.S. has conducted 37 strikes compared to just 4 during the entire first year of the Biden administration. That's actually nearly as many as President Trump authorized in his first year, which totaled 39. So could you first tell me what is the objective of these airstrikes?
Congresswoman, this is one of the number one objectives of Secretary Hegseth came in when he became the Secretary of Defense. He said AFRICOM needs to do counterterrorism operations to protect the homeland. Up there in the Golis Mountains, you have ISIS Somalia. They have the propensity to affect the homeland, whether it be global financing. We had to stop that. We did have an operation back in 2023, but ISIS Somalia has grown. As a matter of fact, the emir is there now. They've only increased their capability and capacity. That's why we had to turn up the heat on putting pressure through lethal means to be able to attract that.
I understand the threat. I guess what I'm concerned about is that we've been using this same logic for decades. It doesn't seem like it's attached to any ability for us to eventually leave. And we saw that, for instance, in 2019, when there was expanded airstrikes, that it didn't actually translate to fewer al-Shabaab attacks in Somalia. So are these airstrikes part of a coherent, articulated strategy aimed at enabling long-term stability and ultimately drawing down the U.S. military footprint?
Yes, that's our operational intent right now, to be able to cease or deter their ability for ex-ops to protect the homeland.
Okay, that's different than there being an actual strategy. Ms. Thompson, you said Somalia is an incredible success. I think I would disagree with your assessment of that. Is there a whole of government coherent, articulated strategy aimed at enabling long-term stability and ultimately drawing down the U.S. military footprint in Somalia?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. I would highlight my commentary was meant to associate with the INDSG guidance. Our number one objective is obviously to deter and deny and degrade credible ex-ops threats to the homeland. As I've highlighted, and as you highlighted in your opening comments, the significant uptick in strikes is demonstrative of basically attaching those activities to our number one INDSG objective. So I would articulate that is where the connection to the strategy is. In terms of force posture in Somalia on a long-term basis, this is something that obviously we would contemplate as part of the broader global force posture review, and no decisions for AFRICOM or for anywhere else have been made at this time. But it's certainly something that would factor into the strategy.
None of this sounds like an actual strategy to create stability in Somalia, so I will look forward to following up with you both on that. General Kurilla, I'd like to turn to you now on Yemen. Civil society and media organizations have reported numerous civilian casualties caused by recent U.S. operations in Yemen, many as a result of the use of heavy explosive weapons in populated areas. For example, the U.S. strikes on Ras Isa port in Hodeidah on April 17th reportedly killed at least 84 civilians. So one, did CENTCOM foresee the level of civilian harm reported, and what steps did CENTCOM take to mitigate the risks of civilian harm during the conduct of recent strikes in Yemen?
So any civilian death is a tragedy. What we have is a civilian harm mitigation team that investigates every single one of these to determine if they're credible. There are still several that are under investigation. You mentioned Ras Isa. There were several things that we did to mitigate that prior, to include heavy ISR soaking of that prior to that. We did messaging to the individuals there. We did messaging to the ships. We ensured the weaponry and the mitigation of those systems. Now, the problem is you have a fuel port that is being hit. We did not target the trucks that were in the port at that same time. But again, that's under investigation to determine the actual numbers. And again, I would argue that this is the Houthi casualty numbers as well.
And can you commit today on behalf of CENTCOM to publish your findings on civilian casualties in Yemen?
We push all of that up and, to the OSD, and they end up pushing those out.
Okay, so you will publish
Absolutely.
Them. Excellent. Thank you so much. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes a gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Thompson, thank you for being here. Generals Kurilla and Langley, thank you for being here and for your service. I want to start by asking you the same question I've asked every combatant commander that has come before HASS this year. In your opinion, has the space-based threat from China and Russia in your theater improved or worsened in the last 5 years?
From a CENTCOM perspective, Russia has actually gone down because they're no longer really in the region where they were basing some of their space-based threats. China has probably increased, but I would tell you Iran has significantly increased.
So overall increased, you would say? Yeah. General Langley?
On the continent, Africa has increased, especially down in Namibia, dual use, state-sponsored type space-enabling capabilities by the CCP.
Yeah, and obviously we're in an open setting here, but can you provide maybe a brief description of how this threat affects your operations, General Kurilla?
I would be happy to do that in a closed session.
Okay, sounds good. General, same? Okay.
Yes, in a closed session.
Okay, thank you. On another topic, I'm concerned about the nuclear threat from Iran and reports that they rejected the latest proposal for a new nuclear deal from the U.S. And it seems like Iran is hell-bent on having nuclear weapons, which would be a direct threat to the existence of Israel. General Kurilla, in your written testimony, you say, quote, a nuclear-armed Iran would change the Middle East overnight and forever, potentially setting off a regional arms race with catastrophic consequences, unquote. Can you expand on this? What would a Middle East with a nuclear Iran look like?
I think you would see other countries in the region doing everything they could to obtain a nuclear weapon, either development or through purchase, to be able to gain one, to be able to retain deterrence back with Iran.
And how can CENTCOM deter Iran from proceeding with their nuclear development program? How can they strengthen the president's hand at the negotiating table?
I provide a range of options to the president, but I am in all favor of having a negotiated settlement that prevents Iran from getting a nuclear weapon because of the consequences of conflict.
Okay. And then, General Kurilla, what lessons can the U.S. learn from Iron Dome that could be applied to the development of Golden Dome? Do you believe deterrence by denial to be an effective strategy?
It can be. But I would tell you some of the biggest lessons learned is how Israel's defense industrial base works. You cannot even sell a system to the Israeli military, the IDF, that is not open architecture, that will not work with the rest of their systems, so you don't end up with a proprietary system that's standalone. We need systems that can integrate and all talk to each other.
And so Golden Dome should take note of that.
That would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you, General. Ms. Thompson, how does our partnership with Jordan advance peace and stability in the Middle East?
Thank you for the question, sir. I think Jordan, in particular, and our partnership with the Jordanian Armed Forces, not only goes to promote greater burden sharing throughout the region to include countering shared threats that we have, particularly on the terrorism front, but then also weapons and narcotics smuggling and interdiction. They're a really great partner on that. And then UAS and ballistic missile interdiction as well. And I'm sure General Kurilla can provide some more operational specifics, but those are the main pillars of the security relationship that we have with the Jordanians.
General?
They're one of our strongest partners. They're the country I have visited the most when I go to the Middle East.
Okay. Is there any more that the department could do to support Jordanian armed forces?
I think there are things that we can do to strong point Jordan in the counter-UAS. Counter-UAS in Jordan defends both Jordan, U.S. forces, and Israel.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Thompson, after years of neglect by President Biden, President Trump is right to prioritize our Gulf partners. How did his recent visit to the region advance U.S. national security interests?
Thank you for the question, sir. And I would just highlight particularly the deepening of defense partnerships that we have. Not only, I mean, as General Kurilla has highlighted, obviously we have a long way to go on working through the kinks in our FMS process and defense industrial base, but deepening those partnerships to enable greater allied burden sharing, but then also interoperability and empowerment of our Gulf partners to take on more of the responsibility in the region, particularly given normalized relations with Israel for a fair few of them, is a massive step in the right direction for the posture we want to have in the region. And then I would also just highlight the commercial success as well. That's coupled with the defense success, and I think both per President Trump's comments and Riyadh really echo that sentiment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired. I do want to make the announcement that we will be concluding the open session at 12:30 and going into classified session a few minutes thereafter because votes are going to be called on the House floor at 1:30. So with that, the chair, I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Ryan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry to my colleague from Pennsylvania. I think I got here after you. Thank you all for being here, especially given that it's both of your last hearings, Generals Kurilla and Langley. Just want to, that's an appropriate fist bump. Just want to commend and thank you both, as I know many of my colleagues have, but cannot be said enough. Appreciate it. And General Kurilla, in particular, I want to commend you. I don't think you've, I know you're a humble, quiet professional, but I think in particular, what you did in defense of Israel, in defense of the region, in defense of the U.S., most importantly, in your leadership on two unprecedented direct attacks, as you said in your opening testimony, that have never occurred in the history of either Iran or Israel. Your leadership in preparing and executing that defense was exceptional, and I think we all have a lot to learn on a bunch of levels from that, but I just wanted to say that publicly here today. Ms. Thompson, appreciate you being here again. I know the last time you were here, I was a little frustrated that we weren't getting really many answers from you. Hopefully we can get some more answers. My line of questioning is similar to what I asked you last time. I know it's been hit on by colleagues, but I want to come back on it again. I want to bring in what General Kurilla said in his opening very powerfully in speaking about both the risks and the tectonic shift, but also the opportunity vis-a-vis Iran on its heels or arguably knees, and our ability and opportunity to press in that moment. And I'm trying to just wrestle with the dissonance between that and some of the both appointees of this administration and some of the rhetoric of this administration, not so much you today in your testimony specifically, but I've pointed this out before, the DASD for the Middle East. Mr. Domino has said deeply concerning things, including that the Middle East does, quote, not really matter for U.S. interests, that, quote, vital or existential threats in the Middle East are, quote, best characterized as minimal to non-existent. He's also specifically characterized Iran's missile attacks on Israel as, quote, fairly moderate. I think General Kurilla, I'm not going to put you on the spot, might disagree with that. He's vocally opposed attacking Iran's nuclear program and described U.S. strikes against the Houthis as, quote, futile. Can you just explain to us, I mean, I agree with what I've heard from General Kurilla and other experienced military leaders. We need to press the advantage we have vis-a-vis Iran and their proxies. How are we supposed to do that when senior appointees in the Pentagon are saying things like that?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. First and foremost, I will just note that I was not involved in the hiring of any officials in the administration or the political.
But you are here to speak on its behalf.
So what I would say from the ISA perspective within the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, I will make very clear we support the president's objective to not only first and foremost defend the state of Israel, but second, of course, deny Iran the ability to obtain a nuclear weapon. That is something we are 100% committed to. And I will also note that we support the president's objective and stand ready to provide military options should his strategy of pursuing peace with Iran through a negotiated solution and denying Iran a nuclear weapon through a negotiated solution. We stand ready as a department and within OSD policy to provide the Secretary.
I'm sorry,
and the
but
President.
how are you ready if you're not in agreement? I mean,
I can only speak.
Should Mr. Domino be in the position then if he's not aligned with the president's intent?
That's not something that I can specifically speak to, but I can speak to for the international security, role that I play in the Department of Defense. This is what we are committed to, working under Undersecretary Colby. We are very much in line with Secretary Hegseth and President Trump's guidance on this, and none of that has changed.
Might this dissonance explain, for example, why in the recent back and forth about the negotiations, which we all agree we want to happen, there's lack of clarity on level of enrichment that might be allowed within the administration, signaling division and weakness to our adversaries?
So that's not something I can speak to. That's something that would be a question for Ambassador Witkoff's team at the State Department, because they are the lead for negotiations.
And Ms. Thompson, I'll interrupt you again. I respect you. I know you have a hard job, and I know you're performing the duties of, if I'm saying that right, yes, performing the duties of.
Correct.
But can the administration send us someone that can speak to these? Are pretty important questions. Can we get somebody that can speak to these?
I would very much like to come and do a broad Iran briefing for you all, if that would be something that's helpful. But I would respectfully ask that the State Department be present for that as well, because Ambassador Witkoff's team, as the lead for negotiations, really would have the most color.
Gentleman's
to add to
time's
that, in
expired.
addition to-
Chair now recognizes
Mr.
the gentlelady from South Carolina, Ms. Mace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Iran's reckless behavior continues to threaten U.S. forces, our allies, and regional stability. Its support for Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis and other dangerous proxy groups continue to sow chaos throughout the Middle East, as I know you all are very familiar. Its support for proxy militias and terrorists threatens our interests and those of our allies, while it advances in ballistic missile technology and pursuit of nuclear weapons threaten to plunge the region into greater turmoil. CENTCOM's presence in the region deters aggression against our personnel and Middle Eastern allies. We must impose real cost on the Ayatollahs and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard to ensure that deterrence is fully restored and Iran ceases its destructive activities. We must also send a clear message. Any advance toward Iran acquiring nuclear weapons is unacceptable to the United States. I commend President Trump's efforts to ensure Iran's nuclear program is fully dismantled. Nothing short of full dismantlement of their nuclear capabilities will ensure peace and stability in the region. So the Iranian regime has mastered the art of wielding proxy groups against its adversaries in the region repeatedly. From Hamas barbarism to Hezbollah's arsenals in Lebanon and the Houthi strikes in the Red Sea, Iran leverages its surrogates to strike our allies and harm our interests. So my first question today for General Kurilla, can you briefly discuss the threat landscape you see from Iran, including the use of proxies?
So Iran basically has three pillars that they use. The first one is long-range weapons and anti-access aerial denial. So think long-range missiles, UAVs. The second is their proxy networks. The number one proxy they had was Lebanese Hezbollah, which acted as a bit of a sword of Damocles over the top of Israel. Israel's, the doctrinal term, disintegration of Lebanese Hezbollah should be studied by every military.
I was recently there and saw that destruction, and they did a very successful work.
It was brilliant. What they have done to Hamas. The Houthis were one that not a lot of people thought about before, because at one point it was the lowest priority for intelligence. I think it is something that we have to pay a lot of attention to. I think what you're seeing with the Iranian-aligned militia groups inside of Iraq, they used to be inside of Syria. With the fall of Assad, that basically severed the Shia crescent. Qasem Soleimani, who we killed back in 2020, he wanted to have this Shia crescent that ran from Iran to Iraq, Syria to Lebanon. The fall of Assad severed that. That is probably the single biggest event that has happened in the Middle East.
And what's changed since October 7th?
I think what's changed since October 7th is Israel feels they're an existential threat for their very existence, with a lot of these Iranian proxies that are attacking them. And we had the first state-on-state attacks, blows between the two countries. Iran is a weaker strategic position. They've lost a lot of their proxies. Their air defense network is not what it used to be. However, they still have a lot of operational capability in terms of their long-range weapons. At the classified session, I can talk in great detail their capabilities.
Do you have any concern about the Houthis and their relationship with Saudi Arabia?
The relationship with Saudi Arabia, no, I don't have. I mean, Saudi Arabia has been a strong supporter of what we were doing in Operation.
Yes, they have. But my understanding is we designate the Houthis, for example, as not the top tier terrorist organization. They're on the lower rung of designation. Is that correct?
They were, ma'am. They were first a specially designated terrorist group, and then we made them a foreign terrorist organization under President Trump. So they are at the top levels.
They're at the top level now, which is something I advocated for when Biden was president, and it didn't happen, which means there are consequences to that in the Middle East, which is good for the United States and our allies overseas. Has the degradation of Iran's proxy network affected its ability to destabilize the region?
So the one challenge we have with Iran, they get petrodollars.
Okay.
90%, 85 to 90% of their oil is purchased by China. So China is effectively supporting and financing Iran's malign behavior. We still see the amount of funds that are going to the IRGC Quds Force, that is who runs the proxy networks outside of Iran. So as we look at the sanctioned oil, I think for the first time, the State Department sanctioned what are called the teapot refineries. These are refineries along the Chinese coast that these Ships take this sanctioned oil. Iran, this is 10% of all Chinese oil they get. They import 70%, 50% goes to the Strait of Hormuz, but it's 85 to 90% from Iran. It goes into these teapot refineries, and I think the first time we've ever done is we've sanctioned one of those teapot refineries.
Last question, thoughts on Qatar?
We have a very strong relationship, military to military. Largest base there. They fund the base. They do burden sharing. When I ask them a question, they say the answer is yes. What is the question?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Hulan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that's what you get for being late to the gavel. I really appreciate your service, General. In general, thank you so much for your amazing careers and for the opportunity to speak with you. Most questions have been asked, so I'm going to ask the one that I have that hasn't yet been asked. General Langley, you spoke a lot about what's going on in Africa and the fact that you've had a conversation with our partners and allies and that they understand and are embracing, in your, I think, words, their new roles and responsibilities. I'd like to believe that, and so let's say that that's true, because I hear that a lot from all of Europe as well, about Europe and Ukraine. Assuming that is true, can you describe how AFRICOM is operationalizing that process of transitioning the responsibilities and roles over to our allies and to our partners? And can you also explain, and this is for both of you all, how you would measure or what sort of metrics or benchmarks you would have to know whether or not our partners are indeed transitioning and are really truly prepared to be able to take on this sort of operational responsibility? That's my only question, so I'd love it if you would give it some real thought, because it's really, really important that if we assume that these folks can or are interested in doing this, that we have performance metrics or standards that we're looking for, and that we also have an operational plan that we have to transition those responsibilities over.
Congresswoman, I'm grateful for the question. I know we last spoke when we were at Munich Security Conference, and we were in the throes of the Title 22 pause, and then at the forefront of the Title 10 review. So at AFRICOM, what we had to do is reassess where we were and try to do some predictive analytics on what the effects would be. This is all in parallel with structuring our narrative of going to our partners, going to our allies, and come up with straight talk of what it really means of a shared burden for the sake of stability and security on the continent of Africa. So I did. Further, I did meet with the NATO rep for the southern neighborhood, as they call it SNAP, and shared that with him. I said, our government, we are all in for stability and security across Africa, but we need a shared commitment from you, because this is your southern neighborhood. What happens as far as mass migration or a migration of terrorists that can threaten your neighborhood, your borders, is our same concern with our southwest border. So that soaked in well. With our African partners, a shared commitment. They said, well, it's going to take a little time, and also we're going to diversify our partner. So we get that, as long as we have those shared objectives, as long as we have those shared values to reach that end state. So in Nairobi last week, I collectively got with the chiefs of defense and said, hey, their biggest message to me, hey, we're not looking to be saved. We can hit stability.
But what does that look like? And when you're talking about, a narrative, narratives don't get it done. What is the plan? What is the operational plan that we all have collectively on our responsibility to hand that over, and on our ability to measure whether it's actually been handed over with any sort of security or safety or assurance that it will be consistent to the standards that we have always put to the region?
And Congresswoman, I'll just tell you, the plan is theirs. Every country is different. We don't push ourselves to invade on their sovereignty. Every country is coming up with their own plan. That was their takeaway. But they also know that the militaries, all these military leads, know that they're giving their best military advice for the enduring solution from their layered threats. One of them that's a shared threat of ours is terrorism. So therein lies their ability and their responsibility to come up with their own plans. I'm seeing it different from coast to west Africa all the way to Somalia. They all have a different approach. I have to respect that. And how we
Sure.
can, then we decide, then we go through our Title 10 review, and we double down based on the empirical data, what has worked in the past and what didn't work.
But how
what
do
didn't
you
work is
weave
gonna hit.
those strategies together, or do you just walk away and say everybody's got their own plan, and it looks like excuse me, a bunch of Democrats, we're all going to have a different plan? You don't want that. You want people to figure out how to work together, and us walking away from this is irresponsible unless we feel as though we're walking away with a plan that's unified and not just individual sovereignty. Am I making sense?
Gentleman's time expired. Chair, now recognize
Thank
the
you. I
gentleman
appreciate
from
it.
Virginia, Mr. Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us. Ms. Thompson, General Kurilla, General Langley, thank you so much for your service. Thanks for all you've done for our nation. I want to try to maybe draw a line amongst a number of different issues that you all are dealing with. I really think that the combatant commands being there on the front lines probably have the best assessment and understanding of the threat and the timeliness of the threat, and then how that needs to be expressed and the assets that we need in order to counter that threat. I mean, we see our exquisite assets, the ones you have in theater, General Carrillo, General Langley. You see where we pull the Carl Vincent from the East China Sea. We extended the deployment of the Harry Truman. General Langley, you know that when we had needs there in Africa, whether it's places like Sudan, Morocco, even some of the other events there in the Red Sea, we see the demand signal go up, and then when we'd like to have a crisis response team in an ARGMU, we don't have it, or we have to move other assets around. General Carrillo, you spoke at length about the building threat from one-way attack drones, and all you have to do is to look at the aerial photographs of the runways there in Russia and ask the Russians about the impact of one-way attack drones, and give the Ukrainians credit. But the thing that concerns me is that's a scenario that can play in the opposite direction today and tomorrow. And I just don't believe we have the counter-UAS capability that we need. I want your perspective, because I think the COCOMs are closest to the threat. And if you were tomorrow to say, these are the things that I need that I can operationalize quickly. Well, I love our exquisite platforms, and we need them. But they're not coming quickly, and they're not coming inexpensively. But there are lots of opportunities with expendables and attritables. Give me your perspective. If you could give us on your UFOR list, if you could say today, my top priorities on the UFOR list, the way you see the threat as it is today, both of you, what would be your top 5 priorities to make sure this nation gives you at least a part of the tool set that you need, part of the kit that you would need to counter what you see and how it changes on a daily basis?
So the greatest risk, Congressman, in the CENTCOM AOR is the unmanned aerial systems and ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
So it would be in the detect and kill of counter-UAS to include swarms, large numbers. You need magazine depth. And then in terms of our air defense assets that are forward deployed, you have to be able to protect those from counter-UAS as well. We need to be very mobile. We need to be able to integrate them into the systems. When I took over 3 years ago, if I walked into a base defense operations center, that's where they do all the command and control for the base to be able to defend against drones, you'd see 5 systems, 5 screens, 5 operators.
Yeah.
Now when you walk in, we've been able to integrate that into maybe 2 screens and 2 operators, but you have now 7 systems integrated into there. So we need to really do better at the detect. We're only going to see the systems get smaller, more lethal. Electronic magnetic information, the electromagnetic spectrum, when we try and jam them, that's why the Ukraine and Russia went to fiber optics, going out to 40 kilometers with fiber optic drones. Yeah. You can't jam that. So those are the things I would ask right now is the counter-UAS detect. I think we need to put aerial AESA radars for low radar cross-section to be able to pick up, elevated, and then ballistic missile defense.
Very good. General Langley?
Ballistic missile defense.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
I think my top three is about the same as Eric Carilla's, counter UAS, integrated air missile defense, and but I was going to add, sense to make sense, ISR. I'm at a deficit for ISR across the continent, emanating threats. Match capabilities to the threats. That's what Secretary Head told me to do, and that's what I'm requesting. But just go further down the list. Maritime capability. Like I said, I've said it already, but I'm just going to go ahead and bang the drum. We missed the ARG-MU. Yeah. We missed the Amphibious Readiness Group. The Marine Expeditionary Units, they're ready, but they're sitting on the shore. But we need to fix the ship problem. As far as that three-ship ARG is what's needed. We can't do heel to toe anymore. Sometimes we're not even 1.0. We need to get back there. I talked to the Vice CNO the other day, and he gets it, as well as I talked to the Commandant of the Marine Corps. We missed that in the AFRICOM AOR, from crisis response, and we need that sea-based forward. You're right, Congressman. We really did need that when Hamedi was going at it with Burhan in Sudan. We really needed that offshore to utilize that. So, and then also for a force deterrent, it's a show of power to contend with the net up that the Chinese is going around the periphery of the continent.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You back.
Gentleman's time expired. This will conclude the open portion of our hearing. We will reconvene in 10 minutes at 12:40 in room 2212 for the classified portion.